Winter 1944. Somewhere inside a frozen German POW camp, an American soldier sits on a wooden bunk, holding the last piece of bread he may eat for days. His hands shake from hunger and cold and fear. Then the door opens. A young German guard steps inside, exhausted, starving, barely older than a boy. The American looks at his bread. The guard looks at the floor. And in that moment, both men face the same silent question. Will kindness survive even here? This is a forgotten World War II story of a prisoner, a guard, and a single shared meal that changed both of their lives. Sergeant William McKinney was 22 years old when his B-24 bomber was shot down near Frankfurt. He survived the crash, barely, and was captured by German soldiers before he could reach the tree line. He was marched for days, beaten by the cold more than the guards, until he reached Stalag Luft IV, one of the most overcrowded prison camps in Germany. Inside, thousands of Allied airmen were packed into wooden barracks, so tightly that the men joked, "If you fall down, you won't hit the floor." Food was scarce, hope was scarce, and winter was coming. Daily rations were brutal. A thin slice of bread, watery soup made from turnips, sometimes a potato, if you were lucky. McKinney learned quickly that survival wasn't only about strength. It was about morale. Some days were harder than others. Some days felt impossible. One freezing morning, after a night of bombings echoing across the horizon, McKinney received his ration, a small crust of black bread. As he sat on his bunk, preparing to eat, the barrack door opened. Inside stepped a teenage German guard, barely 17, shivering and visibly hungry. His uniform was too large. His boots had holes. His cheeks were hollow. For a moment, their eyes met. Two soldiers on opposite sides, bound by the same suffering. The boy glanced down, ashamed. Then, quietly, he whispered, "Ich have hunger. I'm hungry." McKinney felt a surge of anger. How dare a guard ask him for food? How dare the enemy? The captor, the uniform that had taken everything from him. But then he saw the boy's hands, shaking, blue at the fingertips. The look of someone who hadn't eaten properly in days. War had turned them into enemies, but hunger had made them equals. Slowly, McKinney tore his bread in half. He placed one half in the boy's trembling hands. The young guard stared at it, stunned, then nodded, almost bowing, before slipping out the door. McKinney never expected to see him again. 2 nights later, long after the camp lights went out, the barracks door creaked open. It was a young German guard. But this time, he was holding something. A small bundle, wrapped in cloth. Carefully, silently, he placed it on McKinney's bunk. Then he slipped away into the darkness. McKinney opened the cloth. Inside were 2 boiled potatoes. More food than prisoners would see in a week. He looked around. The guard was gone. Over the following weeks, the two continued their unspoken ritual. McKinney would share part of his ration, and every few days, the guard would return with scraps he had stolen from the officer's kitchen. A piece of carrot, a crust of rye, sometimes a whole potato. Neither spoke more than a few words. They didn't need to. In a place built to break men, they had rebuilt each other. It was an unlikely friendship. 2 enemies surviving because of the shared act of humanity. But war doesn't pause for kindness. In early 1945, as Soviet forces pushed in the east, the Germans evacuated the camp. Thousands of POWs were forced on what became known as the Death March. McKinney, weak and starving, prepared himself for the journey. On the morning of departure, the young German guard approached him one last time. He pressed something into McKinney's hands. It was bread, an entire loaf, stolen no doubt at great risk. The guard whispered, "For Dyke for you." McKinney stared, speechless. Then the boy added quietly, "Geh nach Hause, go home." And just like that, the guard stepped back into the ranks, swallowed by the machinery of war. McKinney never saw him again, but that loaf of bread kept him alive during the march. It saved his life. After the war, McKinney returned home to the United States, married, and started a family. He never forgot the guard, the boy with hollow cheeks and shaking hands, who saved him with small acts of courage. Years later, McKinney was asked, "Why did you share your bread with the enemy?" He paused and answered, "Because that day he wasn't my enemy. He was just a kid, hungrier than I was." History remembers battles, divisions, front lines. But sometimes the most powerful stories come from the moments when those lines disappear, when a shared meal becomes an act of rebellion, and kindness becomes a weapon stronger than hate. This is one of those stories, a reminder that even in the darkest corners of the world, humanity can still survive.